It's not stealing, if it's going to be ours anyway. My son said those words in the same voice he used to order coffee. Calm, matter of fact, like he was explaining something obvious to someone a little slow on the uptake. I was standing in my own hallway, 3 feet from my own kitchen door, and I heard my own child teach his wife how to rob me. I'd come downstairs for my blood pressure pills, left them on the kitchen table after lunch, and my ankles were swelling the way they do when I skip a dose. The TV was on upstairs, some cooking show I wasn't really watching, and I thought I'd be quick. Grab the pills, heat some water for tea, go back to my chair. The kitchen door was open about 4 inches, just enough for voices to carry. "See? You click here," Mitchell was saying. "Then it asks for the password. It's Earl 1952, her anniversary with Dad. She uses it for everything." Candace laughed. Not a mean laugh, exactly. More like the laugh you'd give if someone showed you a shortcut on your phone. She really uses the same password for her bank? Mom's not exactly tech savvy. That's why I come over every Sunday to help with the computer. I could hear the quotation marks in his voice. She thinks I'm doing her a favor. Meanwhile, I check the balance, make sure nothing's changed. She's got $47,000 in savings right now. $47,000 just sitting there. I put my hand on the wall. My legs felt strange, like they belonged to someone else. "And she won't notice?" Candace asked. "Notice what?" "She thinks the balance is whatever the ATM says. She doesn't check statements, doesn't know how to log in herself. That's why I help her, remember?" He chuckled. "We start small. 200 here, 300 there. She'll think it's automatic payments, some subscription she forgot about. By the time she figures it out, if she figures it out, it'll be our word against hers, and who's going to believe a confused old lady over her own son? My name is Dolores. I'm 78 years old. I worked as a cashier at Henderson's Hardware for 34 years, and I can still count change faster than any register. I raised 2 boys in this house, buried my husband in the backyard garden he loved, and I have never in my life been called confused by anyone who actually knew me. Until that moment, standing in my own hallway, listening to my firstborn plan my financial funeral.
You know, I've been thinking, when's the last time you changed your bank password? And if your children come over to help with the computer, do they know how to get into your accounts? Just something to consider. Now let me tell you what Dolores heard standing in her own hallway.
I didn't move. Didn't breathe, really. The hallway clock ticked the way it's ticked for 40 years, and I stood there like I'd grown roots into the hardwood floor Earl installed the summer Mitchell turned 5. "What about the house?" Candace asked. Her voice had that eager edge now, like a dog that just spotted a squirrel. "One thing at a time." Mitchell's chair creaked, the one with the loose leg I've been meaning to fix. "First, we get on the accounts. Then we talk to a lawyer about power of attorney. She's getting forgetful. Everyone can see that. It's for her own good, really. We're protecting her." Forgetful. I remembered his birthday last month. Sent him a card with a check for $50, same as every year. He cashed it 3 hours after it arrived. I know because I still get alerts on my phone, the ones he doesn't know I set up. "And Roland?" Candace asked. "Roland's my younger boy. Lives out in Arizona, calls every Sunday afternoon, sends flowers on my birthday. Doesn't ask for money, doesn't help with anything." "Roland won't be a problem," Mitchell said. "He's 2,000 miles away. By the time he finds out, it'll be done. We tell him it was Mom's idea, that she wanted us to manage things. He won't fight her. He never fights anyone." I heard the laptop keys clicking. "Candace, so I just click transfer?" "Not yet. Let me show you the whole system first. See here? This is her checking. This is savings. She's got a CD too, but that doesn't mature until next year. We leave that alone for now. I looked down at my hands. Same hands that used to hold Mitchell when he had nightmares. Same hands that made him sandwiches for school, that clapped at his little league games, that wrote check after check after check to help him through every rough patch he ever hit. He thought I had 1 foot in the grave already. That's what this was. He looked at me and saw a body waiting to be processed, a bank account waiting to be emptied, a house waiting to be sold. 78 years old, and I'd become a problem to be managed. Let me tell you something about my son Mitchell. When he was born, the cord was wrapped around his neck. They rushed him to the NICU, and I didn't hold him for 6 hours. 6 hours of sitting in that hospital bed, watching the door, praying to a God I wasn't sure I believed in. When they finally brought him to me, this tiny, wrinkled thing with a face like an angry raisin, I promised him everything. Every good thing I could give, every sacrifice I could make, every ounce of love in my body. For 52 years, I kept that promise. Earl and I weren't rich. He was an electrician, mostly residential work. Good with his hands, patient with people, terrible with paperwork. I started at Henderson's when Mitchell was 3 and Roland was a baby, working the early shift so I could be home when the boys got off the school bus. We didn't take vacations, didn't eat out. The only new car we ever bought was a used Buick that Earl found at an estate sale in '89. But we paid off this house. Took us 23 years, and I remember the day we made the last payment. Earl opened a bottle of champagne that had been sitting in the back of the fridge for God knows how long, and we sat on the porch and watched the sun go down over our street, and I thought, this is ours. Nobody can take it away. Earl died 11 years ago. Stroke. He was in the garage fixing Mrs. Patterson's toaster because she couldn't afford a new one, and he could never say no to a neighbor in need. I found him when I brought out his coffee, cup still warm in my hand. The paramedics came, did what they could, but he was gone before they got him in the ambulance. I rode with him anyway, holding his hand, because I couldn't let go. 41 years we'd been married, 41 years of sharing a bed, a bathroom, a life. And then suddenly, I was coming home to a house that was too quiet, with a garage full of tools he'd never use again. After that, it was just me. The house. The garden Earl had planted that I kept going because it felt like keeping a part of him alive. Church on Sundays. Visits from the grandkids when Mitchell and Candace felt like making the drive. Mitchell was always the one who needed things. That's how I thought of it. He needed. Roland managed. Roland figured things out on his own, sometimes the hard way, but he figured them out. But Mitchell needed help, needed money, needed someone to fix what he'd broken. When he wanted to buy his first house, I gave him $15,000 from Earl's life insurance. It's an investment, he said. Property values are going up. I'll pay you back when we sell. They sold that house 6 years later, made $80,000 profit. I never saw a dime. When I brought it up once, carefully, not wanting to start a fight, Mitchell looked at me like I'd asked him to donate a kidney. Mom, you know how tight things have been. The kids need braces. Candace's car is dying. I thought you understood. I understood, all right. I understood that the money was gone and the promise was forgotten, and I was supposed to pretend that was fine. When he married Candace, the wedding went over budget. Of course it did. Candace wanted the fancy venue, the flowers shipped from somewhere, the photographer with the good reviews. Just a few thousand more, Mom. We'll handle the honeymoon ourselves. I wrote the check because that's what mothers do. That's what I told myself. When their car broke down, when the kids needed private school tuition, when the furnace died in February, when there was a temporary cash flow problem that lasted 18 months. I wrote checks. I gave loans that were never loans, just gifts I was too polite to name. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself he was going through a rough patch. I told myself a lot of things that weren't true. The thing about being used by your own child is that you don't see it clearly. Not for a long time. You make excuses. You explain it away. You tell yourself that family helps family, that this is what love looks like, that you'd feel terrible if you said no and something bad happened. And maybe some of that is true. But it's not the whole truth. The whole truth is that Mitchell learned, somewhere along the way, that I would always say yes, that my no wasn't really a no. It was just a yes that hadn't happened yet. All he had to do was apply enough pressure, paint the picture sad enough, make me feel guilty enough, and the money would come. I trained him to treat me like an ATM. I see that now. Every time I gave in, I taught him that my boundaries didn't matter, that his wants were more important than my needs, that I existed to provide, not to be. Standing in that hallway, listening to him explain how easy it would be to steal from me, I finally understood what I'd been to him all along. Not his mother, his backup plan. There's a particular kind of grief that comes with that realization. It's not like losing someone to death where you can mourn and move on. It's more like discovering that someone you loved never existed in the first place. The Mitchell I thought I had, the one who came over on Sundays because he cared, who called to check on me because he worried, that Mitchell was a story I told myself. The real one was in my kitchen, teaching his wife how to steal. I think about the little things now. The way he'd make coffee and pour me a cup without asking. Was that kindness? Or was he keeping me occupied while he checked my accounts? The way he'd comment on how nice the house looked. Was that a compliment? Or was he appraising his future property? Every memory I have of him from the last few years is contaminated now. I can't tell what was real and what was strategy. Maybe none of it was real. Maybe all of it was. I'll never know for certain, and that uncertainty is its own kind of torture. I talked to my pastor about it once. Not the details, I didn't want to explain the whole mess, but the general idea. How do you trust again after someone you loved proves they were using you? How do you know who's genuine and who's just waiting for their chance? He thought about it for a long time. Then he said, "You can't know for certain. Nobody can. But you can choose to live anyway. You can choose to keep your heart open, even when it's been broken. That's not naivety. That's courage." I'm not sure I believe that completely. I think there's a difference between keeping your heart open and leaving your door unlocked. You can love people and still protect yourself. You can trust people and still verify. You can be generous without being stupid. But I appreciated the sentiment, and I think he was right about the choice part. Every day I wake up and choose to keep living. Choose to keep hoping. Choose to believe that most people aren't like Mitchell, even if one very important person was. The thing I keep coming back to is the word he used. Eventually. The money would be theirs eventually. The house would be theirs eventually. I would die eventually. And then everything I'd worked for would transfer to their name like it had been waiting all along. He wasn't wrong about the timeline. I'm 78. The actuarial tables don't lie. But there's a difference between acknowledging that your mother will die someday and actively planning around it. There's a difference between hoping for an inheritance and trying to speed it along. Mitchell didn't just want what I had. He wanted it now. He wanted it on his schedule. And if I wasn't dying fast enough for him, well, he'd just help himself to the money while I was still breathing. That's what hurts. Not that he wanted my things. Everyone wants their parents' things eventually. That's human nature. But that he couldn't wait. That my being alive was an inconvenience to his financial plans. Roland turned out different. I don't know why. Same house. Same parents. Same schools. But Roland calls to ask how I'm feeling, not how much I have. When he visits, he doesn't check my mail or look at my computer. He sits with me on the porch and tells me about his job, his garden, the stray cat he's been feeding. He asks if I need anything and accepts when I say no. Last Christmas, he flew in for 3 days. We didn't do much. Watched old movies, made soup from scratch, drove out to the cemetery to put flowers on Earl's grave. When he left, he hugged me at the airport. Really hugged me. The kind of hug that says, "I love you," without needing words. "Call me if you need anything, Mom," he said. "I mean it. Anything." I felt guilty for years that I looked forward to Roland's visits more than Mitchell's. Every time Mitchell walked through the door, something in me tensed up, waiting for the ask. The favor. The small thing that was never small. With Roland, I could just be. Be his mother. Be myself. Be someone who wasn't constantly being measured against what she could provide. Now I understood why. Roland saw me as his mother. Mitchell saw me as his safety net. The thing is, I don't think Mitchell woke up one day and decided to become a thief. It happened slowly, the way rust eats a car. First, he started expecting help instead of asking for it. Then he started feeling entitled to it. Then he started resenting me when it didn't come fast enough or big enough. And finally, he started planning how to take it. Every Sunday for the past 8 months, he's been coming over to help with the computer. He'd sit at my desk, click around, say things like, "Mom, you've got too many tabs open," or "Let me clear your cache." And I'd thank him. I'd make him coffee and cookies and thank him for his time. But now I understood what he was really doing. Every Sunday, he checked my bank balance. Every Sunday, he made sure the login still worked, that I hadn't changed anything. Every Sunday, he calculated how much was left and how long until he could get his hands on it. He knew I had $47,000 to the cent. He knew when my Social Security hit. He knew my password, my security questions, probably my PIN. He'd been doing reconnaissance for months, and I'd been serving him snickerdoodles while he did it. I'm not sure how long I stood in that hallway. Time does strange things when your world tilts. Through the door, I heard Candace say, "So when do we start?" "Soon. I want to wait until after her doctor's appointment next week. If there's anything wrong, memory issues, confusion, whatever, we use that. Start talking about how worried we are, how she needs help managing things, get ahead of the narrative." "And if she's fine?" Mitchell snorted. "She's 78. She's not fine. She's just not bad enough yet." Not bad enough. Like I was a piece of fruit they were waiting to spoil. "We should move before Christmas," he continued. "Get the accounts sorted, then tell Roland after it's done. Present it as a fait accompli. Mom wanted this, Mom asked us to help, you know how she is with technology. He won't fight it. He never fights anything." Candace made a sound of agreement. Then, "What if she notices the transfers?" "She won't. I've been watching her for months. She barely looks at the bank app. Just checks the balance on the ATM when she gets cash. And she gets less cash now because I convinced her to use the debit card more. Told her it was safer." He laughed, actually laughed. She thanked me for the tip. I remembered that conversation. 3 months ago, standing right here in this kitchen. He'd seemed so thoughtful, so concerned about me carrying cash. "Mom, you're a target. Old lady alone, purse full of money. Use the card. It's insured." I'd felt lucky to have such a caring son. My stomach turned. I pressed my hand against the wall harder, feeling the old paint rough under my palm. "Pull up the transfer page," Mitchell said. "Let me show you how it works. We'll do a test run today. Just $500. If she notices, we tell her it was fraud and we're helping her report it. She'll believe anything I tell her." That was when I understood. This wasn't going to be someday. This was going to be today. Right now, while I stood in my own hallway, my son was about to steal $500 from my savings. And he was so sure I'd never know. I want you to understand something about that moment. I've made decisions in my life. Hard ones. The decision to drop out of college when my mother got sick. The decision to marry Earl when everyone said he was too quiet, too ordinary. The decision to go back to work when the boys were small, because we needed the money. The decision to let Earl go when the doctor said there was nothing more they could do. But standing in that hallway with my phone in my hand, hearing my son plan my robbery, that was different. That was the decision that would define everything that came after. Walk in and confront him, and maybe save the relationship but lose the money. Call the police and save the money, but lose the relationship. There was no middle path, no compromise, no way to make everyone happy. I'd spent my whole life trying to make everyone happy. My parents, my husband, my children, my grandchildren. I'd twisted myself into shapes I didn't recognize to keep the peace, to smooth things over, to be the person everyone needed me to be. And where had it gotten me? Standing in my own hallway, listening to my own son teach his wife how to rob me blind. Something in me shifted. Not anger, exactly. That came later. More like clarity. Like a fog lifting after years of not realizing I'd been stumbling through it. I thought about walking in. I thought about screaming, crying, demanding explanations. I thought about the satisfaction of seeing his face when he realized I'd heard everything. But then what? He'd apologize. He'd explain. He'd make me feel crazy. Make me doubt what I'd heard. He'd say I misunderstood, that he was trying to protect me, that Candace was the one pushing, and he was just going along to keep the peace. He'd cry, maybe. He used to cry when he got caught doing something wrong as a kid. Big, messy tears that made me feel like the villain for confronting him. And in a week, or a month, or a year, we'd be right back here. Him calculating my worth. Me pretending not to notice. No. I reached into the pocket of my housecoat. My phone was there. I'd slipped it in out of habit when I came downstairs. My fingers found the screen. In the kitchen, Mitchell said, "Check the routing number. Make sure you've got it right. We don't want this going to the wrong account." Candace. "Got it. So I just hit confirm?" "After I verify. Let me see." I looked at the phone in my hand. 3 numbers. All my life, I'd been taught that family was everything, that you didn't air dirty laundry, that you worked things out in private, kept the peace, protected your own even when they didn't deserve protection. But Mitchell wasn't protecting me. He was hunting me. And I was done being prey. I dialed 911. The thing about being old is that everyone assumes you're weak. They see the white hair, the slow walk, the reading glasses on a chain, and they think, easy target. They don't know that you've survived things that would break them. They don't know that you've been making hard decisions longer than they've been alive. I didn't raise my son to be a thief, But I did raise him to think I'd always forgive him. And maybe that's on me. The dispatcher answered on the second ring. 911, what's your emergency? I kept my voice low, barely above a whisper. My name is Dolores Whitfield. I'm at 4127 Maple Drive. There's a theft in progress at my home? Ma'am, can you describe the situation? My son and his wife are in my kitchen. They're logged into my bank account without my permission. They're planning to transfer money. A pause. I could hear typing. Is this your son who lives with you? No. He came to visit. I overheard them talking. I heard everything. Are you in a safe location, ma'am? I'm in the hallway. They don't know I'm here. Okay, I'm dispatching officers now. Stay on the line with me. Can you describe what they said? I told her. The password, the balance, the plan to take small amounts, the phrase that would stay with me for the rest of my life. It's not stealing if it's going to be ours anyway. The dispatcher was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Officers are en route, Mrs. Whitfield. They'll be there in approximately 10 minutes. Are you able to stay hidden until they arrive? Yes. You're doing the right thing, ma'am. I wasn't sure about that. I wasn't sure about anything, but I stayed on the line, pressed against the wall of my own hallway, listening to my son laugh about something in the kitchen while police cars drove toward my house.
It's not stealing if it's going to be ours anyway. He said it like he was reading off a grocery list. No shame, no hesitation. Now I ask you, what would you have done? Walked in or reached for the phone?
11 minutes. That's how long it took. I counted every second. In the kitchen, Mitchell and Candace kept talking. Money talk, mostly. How they'd use the funds. What debts they'd pay off. How much easier everything would be once they had access to Mom's resources. Resources. Like I was a mine to be stripped. Candace said at one point, "We should have done this months ago. Think how much further ahead we'd be." I wanted to wait until I was sure she wasn't checking, had to be patient. Mitchell sounded proud of himself. It's like fishing. You don't yank the line too soon. Fishing. That's what I was to him, a fish to be caught. Do you think Roland will make trouble? Candace asked. Roland doesn't have the guts. He'll huff and puff, but he won't actually do anything. He's soft. Always has been. Remember when Dad died and Mitchell wanted to contest the will? Roland just folded. Whatever Mom wants, he said. Like he didn't have opinions of his own. I remembered that differently. I remembered Roland saying he trusted me to be fair, that he didn't want to fight over money while we were still grieving. That family was more important than inheritance. But to Mitchell, that was weakness. To Mitchell, Roland's decency was something to be exploited. And your mom? Candace asked. What if she figures it out eventually? Mitchell's chair creaked again. By then, we'll have power of attorney. She can figure out whatever she wants. Won't matter. We'll be in charge. And honestly, the way she's going, she probably won't be around that much longer anyway. Her blood pressure, her knees, her everything. It's not like we're taking money she's going to use. I heard a car door slam outside. Then another. The dispatcher said in my ear, "Officers are at your location. Can you let them in?" I walked to the front door on legs that felt like they belonged to someone else. Through the glass, I saw 2 officers. One young, one maybe my age, both serious. I opened the door. "Mrs. Whitfield?" the older one said. His name tag read, Martinez. "Yes. They're in the kitchen. My son and his wife. They're still logged into my account." He nodded. "We'll take it from here. Can you show us?" I led them through my own house like a stranger giving a tour. The hallway, the photographs on the wall, Mitchell's graduation, Roland's wedding, the grandkids at various ages. The kitchen door still cracked open. Officer Martinez pushed it wider. Mitchell looked up from the laptop. His face went through about 6 expressions in 2 seconds. Confusion, recognition, fear, anger, and then something like calculation. I watched him try to figure out the angle, the excuse, the story that would make this okay. Mom, what's going on? Who are these? Sir, please step away from the computer. Candace was already standing, her chair knocked back, face pale. We weren't doing anything wrong. We were just helping her check her account. Ma'am, step away from the computer. Now. The younger officer moved toward the table while Martinez positioned himself between Mitchell and the door. I stayed in the hallway, watching. My son looked at me, and for a moment, he wasn't a 52-year-old man with a receding hairline and a plan to rob his mother. He was a little boy caught with his hand in the cookie jar, trying to think of a lie fast enough to save himself. Mom, this is a misunderstanding. I was showing Candace your account because we were worried about fraud. There's been a lot of that lately, identity theft, and I wanted to make sure. I heard you, Mitchell. He stopped. I was standing right behind the door. I heard everything. You, what? It's not stealing if it's going to be ours anyway. That's what you said. And then you showed her the password. And then you talked about how I'd never notice because I'm just a confused old lady who believes everything you tell her. The color drained from his face. Candace looked like she wanted to melt into the floor. I caught you dead to rights, Mitchell. Don't insult me by lying now. Officer Martinez had a small notebook out. Mrs. Whitfield, do you want to press charges? I looked at my son. My firstborn. The baby I almost lost. The boy I sacrificed for. The man who looked at me and saw nothing but dollar signs. I thought about courtrooms and lawyers and family dinners that would never happen again. No, I said. I don't want him arrested, but I want this documented. I want a report filed. I want it on record that he did this. The officer nodded. We can do that. Elder financial abuse? It'll be in the system. Mitchell's face twisted. Elder financial abuse? Mom, that's insane. We're family. I was trying to help. I shook my head slowly. That dog won't hunt anymore, Mitchell. Not with me. He flinched at that. It was something his father used to say, back when Mitchell was a teenager testing limits. Earl would look at him with those patient eyes and say, "That dog won't hunt, son. Try again." And Mitchell would back down because Earl had a way of making you want to do better. Not because you were afraid of him, but because you didn't want to disappoint him. I saw something in Mitchell's eyes then. A flicker of the boy he used to be, the one who cared what his parents thought. It lasted maybe half a second. Then it was gone, replaced by that calculating look I was learning to recognize. "You're making a mistake, Mom," he said quietly. "You're going to regret this." "Maybe," I said. "But I already regret the last 30 years of letting you take advantage of me. At least this regret will be new." The police took statements for about an hour. Mitchell tried to explain, to justify, to make himself the victim. He'd only been trying to help. He was worried about fraud. He thought I'd be grateful if he managed my finances. The officers wrote everything down without expression, like they'd heard it all before. They probably had. Martinez told me later that they see cases like this all the time. Adult children who can't wait for their inheritance. Relatives who convince themselves they're entitled. Family members who look at an elderly parent and see a resource, not a person. Most of the time, he said, the victim doesn't call. They're too ashamed, or they're afraid of losing their family. You should be proud of yourself, Mrs. Whitfield. I didn't feel proud. I felt tired and sad, and something else I couldn't name. Candace didn't say much during the whole thing. She kept looking at Mitchell like she was waiting for him to fix it, and when he couldn't, her expression curdled into something between fear and resentment. I got the feeling this wasn't entirely her idea, but she'd gone along with it eagerly enough. That's the thing about money. It makes people show you who they really are. Before they left, the younger officer gave me a card. Mrs. Whitfield, you might want to contact Adult Protective Services just to have something on file and change all your passwords tonight. I will. He hesitated at the door. For what it's worth, you did the right thing. A lot of folks in your situation, they don't want to make waves. They let it go, and it gets worse. I've let too much go already, I said. When the police were gone, Mitchell stood in my kitchen with his coat on, his wife at his elbow, and the look on his face was something I'd never seen before. Not shame, exactly. More like disbelief that the rules had changed. I can't believe you called the police, he said. On your own son. I can't believe you planned to steal from your own mother. We weren't stealing. It was going to be ours eventually anyway. There's that word again. Eventually. You know what eventually means, Mitchell? It means when I'm dead. You were waiting for me to die. That's not... It is. I heard you. She's not going to be around that much longer anyway. That's what you said. You were planning my funeral and my estate at the same time. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. For once in his life, Mitchell didn't have a story ready. Candace tugged his arm. Let's go. There's nothing more to say here. She was right about that at least. They left without hugging me goodbye. Without even looking at me, really. The front door closed, and I heard his car start, and I stood in my own kitchen, looking at the laptop still open on the table, my bank account still on the screen, and I felt something I hadn't felt in a very long time. Not sadness, not anger. Relief. The weight I'd been carrying for years. The expectation that I had to help, had to give, had to sacrifice. It was gone. Like setting down a suitcase you didn't realize you'd been holding. That night, I changed every password I had. The bank, the email, the account at the pharmacy, the library card, everything. I used a different one for each. Random combinations of numbers and letters that I wrote in a notebook and hid in my jewelry box, under the pearls Earl gave me for our 20th anniversary. Then I called Roland. It was late in Arizona, but he answered on the second ring. Mom, everything okay? I told him. All of it. The conversation I overheard, the police, the report. When I finished, there was a long silence on the line. Mom, I'm so sorry. His voice was thick. I'm so sorry. Don't be. You didn't do anything. I should have been there. I should have known. How could you know? I didn't know myself until today. He exhaled, a shaky breath. What do you need? I can fly out this weekend. I can take some time off, help you figure things out. I'd like that, I said, and I meant it. We should talk to a lawyer, too. Make sure everything's protected. If Mitchell tries anything else, he won't. You don't know that, Mom. He's desperate now. Desperate people do stupid things. I know that there's a police report now. I know that if he comes near my accounts again, it won't be a family conversation. It'll be a felony. He knows it too. Roland was quiet for a moment. You really called the cops on him? I really did. Good. His voice was stronger now, steadier. I know that sounds harsh, but good. He's been taking advantage of you for years, Mom. We both knew it. I didn't want to be the one to say it. Neither did I. Turns out I didn't have to say it. He said it for me, right there in my own kitchen. Roland flew in 3 days later. I picked him up at the airport myself. I still drive, despite what Mitchell likes to tell people. And we went straight to a coffee shop downtown to talk before going home. I've been thinking about this the whole flight, he said, stirring his coffee without drinking it. How long has this been going on? The planning, I mean. At least 8 months. That's how long he's been coming over every Sunday. Maybe longer. I don't know when the idea first started. The computer help. Yeah. I looked at my hands on the table. He came over every week to check my bank balance. I thought he was helping me clear browser history. Roland shook his head slowly. He always was better at charm than character. I wanted to believe he'd grown out of it. People change, don't they? I kept thinking, one day he'll get on his feet, find his footing, become the man I raised him to be. Some people don't change, Mom. They just get better at hiding who they are, or they stop hiding it altogether. We sat with that for a while. The coffee shop was busy, young people with laptops, a mother with a stroller, a couple arguing in whispers by the window, normal life going on around us while we talked about betrayal. What are you going to do? Roland asked. About the future, I mean. I've been thinking about that. I want to see a lawyer. Get everything clear, the house, the accounts, the will. You have a will? I made one after your father died. Mitchell's the executor. Roland set his cup down. That needs to change. Today. I know. He reached across the table and put his hand over mine. His hand was warm, calloused from his garden work, steady. I'm not saying this because I want anything. You know that, right? I don't care about the money. I don't care about the house. I care about you being safe. I know, honey. That's why I'm telling you instead of him. The lawyer's office was on the 3rd floor of an old building downtown, the kind with narrow hallways and portraits of partners on the wall going back 50 years. Mr. Hutchins was about my age, with wire-rimmed glasses and a bow tie and a handshake that meant business. Mrs. Whitfield, he said, after I'd explained everything, what your son did, or attempted to do, is a crime. Even without a conviction, that police report creates a paper trail. If he ever tries to claim you're incompetent or tries to get control of your finances through the courts, that report is evidence that he had ulterior motives. So I'm protected? Better protected than you were. But we should update your documents to be absolutely sure. He pulled out a legal pad. Let's start with the power of attorney. You currently have one naming Mitchell? Yes. I signed it after my husband died. I thought it was responsible. In case something happened to me, someone needed to pay the bills, handle things. It was responsible. The problem is who you gave it to. He made a note. We'll revoke that immediately and draft a new one. Who would you like to name instead? I looked at Roland, sitting next to me. He hadn't said a word since we came in, just listened with that steady patience he'd always had. Roland, I said, if something happens to me, I want Roland making the decisions. Mr. Hutchins nodded. And the will? Same thing. I want Roland as executor. I want the house to go to him, the savings, the CDs, everything. What about your other son? You're entitled to leave him something, of course, or nothing. It's your decision. I thought about Mitchell, about the money I'd given him over the years, the chances, the excuses, about the phrase that would echo in my head until the day I died. It's not stealing if it's going to be ours anyway. Mitchell's received his inheritance already, I said. He just took it early, without asking. The paperwork took about 2 weeks. Mr. Hutchins was thorough, asking questions I hadn't thought of, pointing out complications I wouldn't have seen. Did I have a healthcare directive? Did I want to name a guardian in case I became incapacitated? Had I considered a trust instead of a will to avoid probate? By the end, I had a new will, a new power of attorney, a new healthcare directive, and a durable power of attorney for finances. Everything was in order. Everything was protected. Roland stayed for the whole process, sleeping in the guest room, cooking meals I didn't ask for, driving me to appointments I could have managed myself. It felt strange to be taken care of without strings attached, without a silent tab running in the background, adding up what I'd owe. "You don't have to stay," I told him one evening. We were sitting on the porch, watching the sun go down the way I used to with Earl. "You've got a job, a life. I'm fine." "I know you're fine. I'm staying because I want to." Mitchell never stayed when he didn't have to. Mitchell and I are different people, Mom. We've always been different people. I looked at him. My younger son. The one who'd always been easier, but somehow more reliable. The one who called when he said he would, and showed up when he promised. "Why?" I asked. "Why are you so different?" "I raised you the same way." He thought about it for a long minute, watching a bird hop across the lawn. "I don't know, not really. Maybe because I watched him. Watched how he treated you. Watched you let it happen. Watched you make excuses for him year after year, and I decided I didn't want to be like that." He shrugged. "Or maybe I'm just not as hungry. Some people always need more, no matter how much they have." I never felt that way. "Your father was like that," I said quietly, "always reaching for the next thing. But he had limits. He wouldn't have stolen from me. No, he wouldn't have." We sat in the fading light, and I thought about the different ways children turn out. Nature, nurture, luck, choice, some mixture of everything, impossible to untangle. You raise them the same, love them the same, and they still become such different people. "He hasn't called," I said. "Not once. Not to apologize, not to explain, not to yell at me. Just silence." "Are you surprised?" "No. I thought I might be sad about it, though. And I'm not. I'm just tired." Roland nodded. "You've been carrying him for 50 years. It makes sense you're tired." Mitchell did eventually make contact, but not with me. He sent a message to Roland, a long, rambling text about how I'd destroyed the family and how Roland was taking advantage of the situation to cut him out. Roland showed it to me. I read it twice. "He thinks you're manipulating me," I said. "Of course he does. It's easier than admitting what he did." "Are you going to respond?" "I already did." He showed me his reply, short and direct. "Mom made her own choices. She's competent to make them. Take it up with her if you have a problem." I felt a flicker of something. Guilt, maybe, or sadness. This was my family falling apart in text messages. "Maybe I should call him," I said. "And say what?" I didn't have an answer. "Mom, listen to me." Roland's voice was gentle but firm. "Mitchell doesn't want a relationship. He wants access. There's a difference. If you call him, he's going to see it as weakness. He's going to think he can still work you, still find an angle. He's my son. So am I. And I'm telling you, as someone who loves you, Don't give him another opening. Not yet. Maybe not ever. It was the hardest advice anyone had ever given me, and the truest. Candace tried too, in her own way. She sent a letter, an actual paper letter, which surprised me, explaining how worried they'd been about my declining health and how they only wanted to help manage things before it was too late. She wrote about how stressful it had been, watching me struggle with technology, with finances, with the challenges of aging alone. She didn't apologize for what they'd said. She apologized for how I'd taken it. I showed the letter to Mr. Hutchins. He read it with that careful lawyer expression and handed it back. "Keep it," he said. "Don't respond, but keep it. If they ever try to claim they had your best interests at heart, this letter proves otherwise." How? Because she's not admitting wrongdoing, she's justifying it. A real apology says I was wrong. This says you misunderstood. Very different things. I put the letter in a folder with the police report and the old power of attorney documents, a record of everything that had happened in case I ever needed to prove it. I hoped I wouldn't, but I'd stopped assuming the best. There's something strange about rebuilding your life at 78. You'd think at this age everything would be settled, that the big decisions would all be behind you. But life doesn't work that way. Life keeps throwing curveballs until the very end, and you either adapt or you don't. I adapted. I started paying more attention to my finances, not obsessively, but carefully. I set up alerts for every transaction over $25. I checked my accounts every few days, something I'd never bothered with before. I even took a class at the senior center about online security, how to recognize scams, how to protect your information, how to know when someone is trying to manipulate you. The instructor was a young woman, maybe 30, with purple streaks in her hair and a patience I appreciated. When she talked about elder financial abuse, she looked right at me as if she knew. Maybe she did. Maybe she'd seen too many women like me, women who trusted the wrong people and paid for it. The most common perpetrators, she said, are family members. Sons, daughters, grandchildren. People you love. People you'd never suspect. I nodded. I didn't say anything, but I thought, I know. I know exactly what you mean. Spring came slowly that year. The daffodils in my garden pushed up through soil that was still cold, and I watched them from the kitchen window while my coffee cooled. Roland had gone back to Arizona. He called every few days instead of every week now, and we talked longer than we used to. Not about Mitchell. I'd asked him to stop bringing it up. But about other things. His work. His garden. The stray cat that had finally moved into his garage. He was dating someone new, a woman named Diana, who worked at a plant nursery and made him laugh. The house was quiet without visitors. Mitchell used to come every Sunday, and whatever his reasons, those visits had broken up the silence. Now the silence stretched from morning to night, uninterrupted except by the mailman and the occasional squirrel on the bird feeder. But it wasn't a bad silence. Not anymore. I'd spent so much of my life making noise for other people. Conversation, accommodation, the constant background hum of making sure everyone was comfortable. Now I could sit in the quiet and hear my own thoughts. It turned out they weren't as scary as I'd expected. I'd been afraid, I realized. Afraid of being alone. Afraid of being forgotten. Afraid of ending up like one of those old women you read about who die in their houses and no one notices for a week. That fear had made me tolerant of things I shouldn't have tolerated. It made me keep giving to people who only took. But I wasn't afraid anymore. I'd faced the worst thing I could imagine, my own child betraying me. And I'd survived it. Not just survived, but acted. I'd picked up the phone and called for help. I'd protected myself when no one else would. That was something. That was maybe everything. I started sleeping better too. For months after Earl died, I'd lie awake at night, listening to the house creak, feeling the emptiness of the bed beside me. After the thing with Mitchell, the sleeplessness came back, but different this time. I wasn't lying awake missing someone. I was lying awake processing what had happened, turning it over in my mind like a stone I couldn't stop examining. But gradually, that faded. I'd wake up with the sun, feeling something close to peace. The house didn't feel empty anymore. It felt like mine. Truly mine, in a way it hadn't before. Every room, every piece of furniture, every plant in the garden, they were mine because I'd chosen to keep them, because I'd fought for them. There's a freedom in that. A terrible freedom, maybe, but freedom nonetheless. One afternoon in April, I got a letter from Mitchell. Not from Candace, from him directly. His handwriting, his words. "Mom, I know you don't want to hear from me. Roland made that clear. But I need to say some things. I messed up. I know that now." What I said in the kitchen, I didn't mean it the way it sounded. I was frustrated. I was worried about money, and I said things I shouldn't have. But I wasn't going to actually take anything. It was just talk. Planning. We never moved any money. You've always been there for me. My whole life, whenever I needed something, you were there. And I took that for granted. I see that now. I should have asked instead of assumed. I should have talked to you instead of going behind your back. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I know I don't deserve it. But I'm asking for a chance to make this right. Not for the money. I don't care about the money. I care about my mother. I care about not losing you completely. Please call me, or write back, or anything. Just let me know there's still a door open somewhere. Your son, Mitchell. I read the letter 3 times. Then I put it down and went to make tea. The words were good, better than I'd expected. If I hadn't heard what I heard in the kitchen, I might have believed them. But I had heard. I'd heard him say I was confused, that I wouldn't notice, that my money was already theirs. I'd heard his voice, calm and confident, explaining how to get away with robbing his own mother. I'd heard him say I probably wouldn't be around that much longer anyway. It was just talk. That's what he said now. But talk is where everything starts. Talk is the plan before the action. If I hadn't come downstairs for my pills, if I hadn't stopped in the hallway, that just talk would have become transfers and power of attorney and a slow draining of everything I'd spent my life saving. I didn't write back. Not because I was angry. I was, a little. But that wasn't the main thing. I didn't write back because I knew Mitchell. I knew his patterns. He'd made apologies before, and they'd always been preludes to the next request. The contrition was genuine, maybe, but it was also strategic. He was sorry, and he wanted something. That's the part that hurt worst. Not that he'd planned to steal from me, but that even his apology felt like another angle. Mr. Hutchins called me a few weeks later to tell me that Mitchell had contacted him. Nothing threatening, just a courtesy call to find out what changes I'd made to my estate. "What did you tell him?" I asked. "That I couldn't discuss a client's affairs with third parties. He wasn't happy." "I imagine not. He mentioned that he's consulting his own lawyer about challenging your competency." I felt my stomach drop. Can he do that? He can try. But Mrs. Whitfield, let me be clear. You are demonstrably competent. You came to me voluntarily. You made decisions that were logical and protective. You have medical records showing no cognitive decline. If he tries to claim otherwise, he'll have to explain the police report. Why a competent woman would call 911 if she didn't understand what was happening. So I'm safe. You're safe. But I wanted you to know what he's doing, in case he tries to contact you directly. After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen for a long time. My son was trying to have me declared incompetent, to take back control of a situation where he'd lost it. I thought about calling Roland, but I didn't want to worry him. I thought about calling Mitchell, but there was nothing to say. Instead, I went outside to my garden, where the daffodils had given way to tulips, and I pulled weeds until my back ached, and my hands were dirty, and my mind was finally quiet. The competency challenge never materialized. I don't know if Mitchell's lawyer talked him out of it or if he just realized he couldn't win. Either way, spring turned to summer, turned to fall, and life went on. I joined a book club at the library. I'd never been much of a joiner, but Roland suggested it, and I didn't have a good reason to say no. The other women were mostly around my age, widows and retirees with time on their hands and opinions about everything. We read mysteries mostly, occasionally something literary that made us all feel smart. We met every other Thursday, and it gave me something to look forward to. One of the women, Margaret, had gone through something similar with her daughter. Not exactly the same, no police, no power of attorney battles, but similar enough. Her daughter had borrowed $15,000 over 3 years, always with promises to pay it back, always with excuses why she couldn't. I finally cut her off last year, Margaret told me one afternoon, when we were the last two left after the meeting. Hardest thing I ever did, but also the best. Do you regret it? I asked. She thought about it. I regret that it was necessary. I regret that she made me choose between my well-being and our relationship. But the choice itself? No, I don't regret that. It helped, hearing that. Knowing I wasn't the only one. Knowing that other women had faced the same impossible situation and survived it. I got a cat, a tabby named Oscar, who showed up on my porch one September morning and refused to leave. The vet said he was about 3 years old, probably dumped by someone who didn't want him anymore. I understood that feeling. Oscar slept on Earl's side of the bed. I told myself it didn't mean anything, but it did. The house felt less empty with another heartbeat in it. Roland came for Thanksgiving. He brought Diana, the woman from the plant nursery, and she had dirt under her fingernails and the kind of laugh that made you want to laugh too. I liked her immediately. We cooked together, the three of us, in the kitchen where everything had happened. I hadn't redecorated or rearranged anything. It was still my kitchen, and I wasn't going to let Mitchell's memory poison it. Over dinner, Diana asked about my garden, and I told her about the tulips, the roses, the stubborn patch of mint that kept taking over the herb bed, no matter how often I dug it up. She promised to send me some cuttings from the nursery, unusual varieties, things I wouldn't find at the regular stores. Mom's garden was always the best on the street, Roland said. When we were kids, neighbors used to stop and take pictures. I had more time then, I said, and more energy. You still have plenty of energy. You're just picky about where you spend it now. I smiled. He was right. After Diana went to bed, Roland and I sat on the porch with hot cider, watching the street. The neighbors had put up Christmas lights early, and they blinked red and green through the bare trees. Have you heard from Mitchell? He asked. Not since the summer. I think he finally got the message. Good. Is it? I looked at him. He's still my son. He's still your brother. Roland was quiet for a moment. He's the man who tried to steal from you. Who planned to have you declared incompetent when you fought back? Whatever else he is, he's that too. I know. Do you miss him? I thought about it. The real Mitchell, or the one I'd imagined? The baby I'd held in the hospital, or the man who'd looked at me and seen dollar signs? I miss who I thought he was. Does that count? I think that's the only honest answer. We sat with that for a while. The lights blinked. The cider got cold. Oscar meowed from inside, wanting company. You know what I don't miss? I said finally. The worry, the constant feeling that something bad was about to happen, that I'd done something wrong, that I wasn't giving enough. I spent years feeling guilty for things that weren't my fault. That's gone now. That's worth something. It's worth everything.
People sometimes ask me, would you really call the police on your own child? And I tell them, yes. Yes, I would. Because what Mitchell did, that has a name. It's not some family misunderstanding you talk out over dinner. It's a crime. Dolores didn't destroy her son's life. She stopped him from destroying hers. And there's a world of difference between those two things.
A year passed, then another. I turned 80 in my own house, with my own cat, surrounded by friends from the book club and Roland and Diana, who was wearing an engagement ring now. We had cake and champagne, and someone put on music from the 60s, and I danced for the first time since Earl died. Mitchell sent a card. No return address, just a card with "Happy Birthday, Mom" and his signature. No note, no apology, no request. I put it on the mantle between photos of Roland's engagement and my grandchildren. Mitchell's kids, who I hadn't seen in 2 years. They'd be teenagers now. They probably didn't think about me much. That was the part that still hurt, if I let myself feel it. The grandkids. They hadn't done anything wrong, but they were caught up in Mitchell's mess, and there was no way to reach them without going through him. I sent birthday cards to the last address I had, never knowing if they arrived. I wondered if he told them anything about what happened, and if so, what version of the story he gave them. Probably I was the villain. Probably I was the crazy old grandmother who called the cops on their father for no reason. Kids believe what their parents tell them. I know that. I raised 2 sons who turned out completely different. And part of that was what I taught them, what I showed them, what I let them get away with. If Mitchell's kids grow up thinking I abandoned them, that's on him. But it still hurts. I keep photos of them on my dresser. Emma, who was 6 the last time I saw her, with her father's eyes and her mother's chin. Tyler, who was 9 and obsessed with dinosaurs, who used to call me on his tablet just to show me his latest drawings. They're probably teenagers now, probably too old for dinosaur drawings and video calls with Grandma. I wonder if they think about me. I wonder if they remember the cookies I used to bake, the stories I used to tell, the way I'd let them stay up past bedtime when their parents weren't looking. I wonder if any of that matters now, or if Mitchell has erased me from their lives the way he tried to erase my bank balance from my accounts. But I'd stopped letting the hurt run my life. I'd spent too many years doing that already. I tell you all this. The full story, the ugly parts, the parts I'm not proud of. Because I know I'm not the only one. There's a woman reading this right now whose son helps with her computer every week. There's a grandmother whose daughter-in-law asks too many questions about her finances. There's a widow whose children discuss her house like she's already gone. I know you're out there. I was you once. Trusting because it hurt too much not to. Giving because it was easier than fighting. Pretending not to see what was right in front of me. So let me tell you what I wish someone had told me. You're allowed to protect yourself. From anyone. Even family. Especially family. Love is not the same as access. Caring for someone doesn't give them the right to your bank account, your house, your life. If someone treats your boundaries like an inconvenience, they're not loving you. They're managing you. You're not crazy. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Trust your gut, even if your gut is telling you something you don't want to hear, especially then. And if the worst happens, if you find yourself standing in your own hallway, listening to your own child plan your financial ruin, you have options. You don't have to confront them alone. You don't have to pretend you didn't hear. You don't have to forgive and forget and wait for it to happen again. You can pick up the phone. You can ask for help. You can protect yourself. I did. And I'm still here. The other day, I was reorganizing my recipe box, the old metal one Earl bought at a flea market back in '74. And I found a card Mitchell had made me for Mother's Day when he was 7. Construction paper and crayon with a drawing of a flower that looked more like a green explosion. Inside, in wobbly letters, "I love you, Mom. You're the best." I sat at the kitchen table and looked at it for a long time. Oscar jumped up and nosed the paper, probably looking for treats. "That's not food," I told him. "That's history." He didn't care. Cats never do. I put the card back in the box, behind the recipe for Earl's favorite meatloaf and the one for lemon bars that I never make right. It wasn't a relic of who Mitchell is now. It was a relic of who he was once, before money and desperation and whatever else turned him into someone who could look at his mother and see a balance sheet. I don't know if he'll ever come back. The real him, I mean. The boy who made that card. Maybe that boy doesn't exist anymore. Maybe he never really did, and I just wanted him to so badly that I invented him. Either way, I can't wait for him. I can't put my life on hold hoping he'll change. I've already lost too many years to hope that didn't pay off. So I live. I read my books and tend my garden and feed my cat and go to church on Sundays. I talk to Roland every few days and count the months until his wedding. I changed my passwords, all of them, to something no one will ever guess. And sometimes, late at night, when the house is quiet and Oscar is asleep on Earl's pillow, I think about what might have happened if I hadn't come downstairs that night, if I hadn't heard what I heard, if I just kept trusting, kept giving, kept pretending everything was fine. I'd probably be broke by now, living in some facility Mitchell picked out, while he and Candace enjoyed my house and my savings and my life's work. Instead, I'm here, in my home, with my things around me and my future in my own hands. It's not the ending I expected, but it's mine. And that, in the end, is what matters most. If you've been holding a secret like this, if someone in your family has made you feel like a burden, a problem, a bank account with a heartbeat, you're not alone. I thought I was the only one, too. I wasn't. We're out there, all of us, learning the hard way that blood doesn't equal trust and help doesn't always mean help. If my story sounds like yours, even a little bit, I want to hear from you. Not because I have answers. I don't. Not really. But because there's something in speaking up that makes the load lighter. Tell me I'm not crazy. Tell me this has happened to you too. Or just tell me you heard. Sometimes that's enough.